Chapter 1. The Castle That Shouldn't Be Found. Once, in a faraway village surrounded by thick woods and crooked trees, lived three sisters. Ava, Lena, and the youngest, Myra. Their parents had passed away suddenly in a mysterious fire, leaving them orphaned and without a home. With no money and nowhere to go, the sisters wandered from town to town, sleeping in barns, empty huts, and even graveyards. One rainy evening, as they were walking along a narrow forest path, they saw something through the Meester giant old castle rising behind the fog. Its windows were shattered, the walls covered in dark green moss. No birds sang near it. It looked completely abandoned. "This place looks strange," Myra whispered, her eyes wide. "Exactly," said Ava. "That means no one will bother us. We'll stay the night." As soon as they entered, the heavy iron doors creaked loudly, and a swarm of bats flew out, brushing past their faces. The air inside was thick, cold, and smelled like damp stone and something else, something rotten. The castle was filled with antique furniture, dusty portraits, and tall mirrors with cracked glass. The halls echoed their footsteps too loudly, as if the walls were listening. "We'll look for food in town," Ava said, turning to Myra. "Yes," Lena added. "You stay here, Myra. Don't touch anything." Myra, frightened but obedient, nodded. She wandered into a side room and sat near the fireplace. It was cold, but she found a torn blanket and wrapped herself in it. Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, she could hear whispers. At first, she thought it was the wind, but then she realized the whispers were coming from behind the walls. Chapter 2. The Locked Room. The whisper grew louder, more distinct. "Myra, Myra." She stood up suddenly, knocking over an old candlestick. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed like thunder in the empty hall. She pressed her ear against the wall. The whispering continued with many voices, layered over one another, impossible to understand but clearly speaking. And they were coming from behind the walls. Outside, her sisters, Lena, the eldest and cautious, and Arya, bold and reckless, walked through the nearby village, unaware of what Myra had heard. The villagers avoided eye contact, muttering prayers under their breath as the sisters passed. "Did you see their faces?" Lena whispered. "They looked at us like we were already dead," Arya replied. They returned after sunset, carrying a stale loaf of bread and a jug of water. Inside the castle, the air felt colder than before. As they called out for Myra, the silence answered back. "Myra," Lena's voice trembled. They found her in the corner, eyes wide open, staring at the wall. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. There, in the walls, watching. Lena scoffed, trying to dismiss the fear, but even she could feel it now, something unnatural about the place. The mirrors vibrated faintly, and the air felt like it was breathing. Later that night, Arya explored deeper into the castle. She discovered a spiral staircase that led to a hallway lined with locked doors. Most were sealed tight, but one stood slightly ajar. She pushed it open. The room inside was filled with dusty children's toys, rotting books, and a small bed that looked untouched for years. But what froze her heart was the writing scratched into the wall, over and over again. "Still here, still here." still here. Then the door slammed shut behind her. Chapter 3. The Room That Remembers. Arya screamed. The sound echoed off the stone walls and was quickly swallowed by the castle's endless silence. She grabbed the doorknob and twisted, pushed, slammed nothing. The door wouldn't budge. The air grew heavier, colder. Her breath fogged in the dark. She turned back to the room. The toys on the shelves, once frozen in time, had shifted. A wooden horse now lay in the center of the room. A porcelain doll with cracked eyes was no longer facing the wall. Its glassy stare met hers. On the bed was a thin layer of dust, except for the spot where someone had been lying. Then came the whispering again. Not from the walls this time, but from the ceiling. Arya looked up. Above her, on the high wooden rafters, symbols had been burned into the beams. Symbols that pulsed faintly with a red light, as if still smoldering. Her chest tightened with fear. She backed away slowly, nearly tripping over a stuffed bear that hadn't been there before. "Myra, Lena," she shouted, pounding the door again. "Open the door." At that moment, on the other side of the castle, Myra jerked upright in the drawing room. Her eyes went wide. "She's trapped," she whispered. Lena looked at her, unsettled. "How do you know?" I heard her, like she was inside my head." Lena grabbed an old lantern, its glass stained and smoky, and they ran down the halls, following Mira's instinct. The castle seemed bigger than before, halls twisted. Doors they had passed earlier were now gone, and new ones had appeared. Was this hallway here before? Lena asked. "No," Myra said quietly, "but it wants us to go this way." Lena stopped in her tracks. "Myra, what are you talking about?" Myra didn't answer. They reached the staircase Arya had taken. The air was colder now, not the kind of cold that numbs the skin, but the kind that bites into your bones. The lantern flickered violently. When they finally found the door, Myra placed her hand on the handle and it opened. Arya tumbled out, shivering, her face pale and streaked with tears. "There was something in there," she gasped. "It was watching me. It knows our names." Lena helped her to her feet. "We're leaving now." But when they returned to the main entrance, the doors wouldn't open. The metal handles had twisted into snarling faces. The keyhole was gone. They were trapped. And behind them, deep in the castle, something creaked like footsteps that didn't belong to anyone alive. Chapter 4. The Eyes in the Mirror. Girls stared at the sealed front doors. Cold iron twisted into snarling faces, mouths open in silent screams. No matter how hard they pulled or pushed, the doors would not move. "We're not alone here," Arya whispered. "Not just that," Myra said slowly. "We were never meant to leave." They decided to return to the room with the fireplace, the only place that still felt remotely safe. As they moved down the long, dark corridors, the candlelight flickered unnaturally, almost as if it were responding to something unseen. The air felt heavier with each step, and the silence was thick with unspoken dread. Lena tried to be the strong one, but her hands trembled as she shut the door behind them. "We'll stay here tonight," she said. "In the morning, we'll search for another way out." Arya nodded, but kept glancing over her shoulder. Myra sat quietly in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees. The whispers had returned. She could hear them even now, low, murmuring voices just behind her ears. But it wasn't just sound anymore. Now she could understand them. "Do you hear that?" Mira asked, her voice oddly calm. Lena frowned. What? They're saying my name again. And something else. Welcome back. The others stared at her, alarmed. Arya moved closer. Myra, are you okay? But Mayra didn't respond. Her eyes had drifted to the tall mirror across the room. Its surface was cracked, blackened with age, but something about it pulled at her. She stood up and walked toward it, slowly, like sleepwalking. Her reflection was distorted, at first, but then the surface rippled. Her image blinked back at her, but the eyes weren't hers. They were too wide, too dark, and they smiled before she did. Mayra, Arya asked again, standing beside her. Then the mirror went completely black. Arya gasped. Did you see that? I saw her, Myra said softly. The girl in the mirror. She lives here. Lena took Myra's arm and pulled her away. We're not doing this. This is just fear, exhaustion, and this creepy place playing with our heads. But even as she said the words, the mirror cracked again by itself. That night, the sisters huddled close to the cold hearth. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it brought dreams of fire, screams, and a castle that shifted its shape. In Myra's dream, she stood in the main hall, but it was different, cleaner, lit by candles that floated in the air. Laughter echoed through the halls. She was wearing a white dress and holding hands with someone whose face she couldn't see. And then the laughter turned to screams. The candles went out. Blood ran down the walls. She turned and saw herself standing behind her, dressed in black, eyes glowing red. When she woke up, she was standing in front of the mirror again, and the eyes in the glass were still watching her. Chapter 5. The Hollow Queen's Shadow. Mayra stood frozen before the mirror. Her reflection watching her was something more than curiosity, something ancient. Lena's voice broke through the stillness. Myra, where's Arya? The question struck like a bolt of lightning. They searched the room, then the hallway. The fire poker Arya had kept near her was lying bent on the floor, just outside the doorway. There were no footprints, no sign of a struggle, just the eerie silence of the castle pressing in from all sides. Arya. Lena screamed, her voice echoing down the long corridor. Nothing. Mayra closed her eyes and whispered something under her breath. Her voice sounded different. Not quite her own. She's still in the castle, she said quietly. But not in a place we've seen before. Lena grabbed her by the shoulders. Mayra, what's happening to you? You're not. This isn't normal. I remember now, Mayra said. She took her to the mirror wing. The what? It was sealed a long time ago, when the fire started. It's where the Queen's spirit sleeps. Before Lena could argue, Mayra returned and led her through a corridor that hadn't been there yesterday. The walls here were black with soot, lined with broken chandeliers and paintings too burned to recognize. Behind a half-collapsed archway, they found a narrow spiral staircase descending into darkness. At the bottom, a hallway of shattered mirrors. Each mirror reflected strange things, not their faces, but old versions of themselves, crying, running, screaming. In one, Lena saw Arya pounding on glass from the inside. There, she shouted. They ran, following the image through the twisting corridor of reflections. The mirrors whispered as they passed, calling their names in hushed tones like a prayer. Finally, they reached the largest mirror, framed in gold, cracked through the center. Behind the glass, Arya floated in a sea of black water, her eyes wide with terror. She's trapped, Lena cried. We have to break it. No, Mayra said. If we shatter the glass, we lose her forever. We need to trade something. What do you mean? The Queen demands payment for every soul she keeps. Mayra stepped forward and pressed her palm to the mirror. A red light began to glow beneath her skin. Then suddenly the mirror pulsed, and Arya was flung out, gasping onto the cold floor. Lena rushed to hold her. Arya was alive, but her skin was colder than ever. Her eyes weren't quite the same. Behind them, the mirror went dark. And a voice whispered,
"One sister returned. One now belongs to me."
Chapter 6. What was taken? The cold air clung to them as they stumbled back into the main chamber. Arya's breaths were shallow, her eyes unfocused. She hadn't spoken a word since the Queen's mirror had released her. Lena wrapped her in blankets and lit every candle she could find, desperate to bring some warmth back into her sister's body. But Mayra just stood near the window, unmoving, staring. You shouldn't have touched that mirror, Lena said finally, her voice cracking. You said something. What did you give her? Mayra turned slowly, her face pale, eyes duller than before. She asked for a memory, she whispered. A memory, Lena echoed, confused. Yes, Mayra said, but not just any memory. She took my first one, the memory of our mother's face. Silence. Lena stared at her, horrified. I can't remember her anymore, Mira said, tears forming. She's just gone, a shadow in my mind. No matter how hard I try to picture her, there's nothing. Just darkness. Arya whimpered softly in her sleep. Her hand twitched. I don't know what she took from Arya, Myra said, but something is missing. Lena knelt beside Myra and hugged her tightly. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know it would cost you that much. Myra didn't cry. Her face was blank, empty. I would do it again, she said, to bring her back. That night, Myra dreamed again, but it didn't feel like a dream. She stood in the grand ballroom, once again restored to its ancient glory. Candles floated, music played faintly from invisible instruments, and ghostly figures danced in elegant silence. At the far end of the room stood a throne of twisted gold, and upon it, the Hollow Queen. Her gown was made of shadows, her veil fluttered despite the still air, and behind her, countless mirrors shimmered, each holding a face trapped within. She raised a hand, beckoning Mayra forward. You gave me a gift, the Queen's voice echoed in Mira's mind. And so I returned the favor. Myra's body moved without her control. She walked to the center of the ballroom and looked into the mirror the Queen held in her lap. Inside it, she saw herself, but not her. It was the little girl version of her, standing in a field of flowers, holding her mother's hand. The image twisted. The mother faded into smoke, and the little girl began to scream. Myra woke with a jolt. Sweat covered her face, and her nose was bleeding. On the mirror across the room, 5 words were written in what looked like blood. The door will open soon, and under that,
only one may leave.
Chapter 7. The Door That Never Closes. The castle groaned that night, as if it were breathing. The sisters huddled in the main hall, the fire offering little warmth. Arya barely spoke. She sat with her back to the mirror-covered wall, tracing symbols into the dust with a shaking hand. She's not done with us, Lena whispered. I can feel it. Mayra stared into the flames. She's waiting. For what? Lena asked. Myra looked at her, and for the first time, There was something ancient behind her eyes, to finish what she started. That night, all three sisters dreamt the same dream. They walked together down a long stone hallway, guided by flickering candles that burned upside down. At the end was a grand set of double doors, gold, carved with faces twisted in agony. As they stepped closer, the castle whispered. She was a queen, betrayed by those who swore to serve her, burned alive in the ballroom, locked inside by her own court. Her spirit became the curse, her sorrow, the soul of this castle. The doors opened. Inside was the throne of the Hollow Queen, empty. But behind it, chained in mirrors, were souls. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Some were whispering, some screaming. Some simply watched the sisters with hollow eyes, silently begging for release. Myra stepped forward, and the queen appeared. Her voice was not cruel. It was calm, regal, sorrowful. This castle remembers grief. It feeds on the forgotten, on the ones left behind. Just like you three. She turned to Myra. You came to me willingly. That is rare, and that is why. She paused, then smiled at a sharp, ghostly thing. The door will open for you. The sisters awoke, screaming. And before them, in the castle's entrance, the iron doors that had never moved before now stood wide open. A soft white fog poured in from outside. Mira stood. We can leave, she said. But Arya didn't move. She clutched Lena's arm. Lena stood too. Let's go right now. But Myra remained still. She wasn't lying, she said. Only one of us can leave. What are you talking about? Lena asked. Myra's eyes filled with tears. The castle needs to keep balance. One soul bound by grief, and one by love. Lena's voice cracked. No, you're not staying. We all go. But Myra shook her head. I gave her my memory of Mum. I'm already part of this place. The door groaned. Fog crept in farther. The mirrors in the hallway began to rattle, whispering the sisters' names over and over. Arya screamed. Myra, please, come with us. But Myra only smiled, a sad, soft smile. She's not keeping me here. I'm choosing to stay. She hugged them both tightly, her touch cold as stone. When you go, she whispered, don't look back, and don't stop walking. Not even if you hear me call your name. The castle shook. Lena grabbed Arya's hand and ran. The fog wrapped around them. The door was closing. They made it. Just as the door slammed shut with a thunderous crash, the fog returned. The castle now sealed behind a wall of brambles and mist. Myra stood inside, alone, and behind her, the Hollow Queen stepped forward, placing a crown of shadow gently on her head.